Hello, welcome to my gaming channel Syndrome Gaming. This is a beginner's tutorial for the Heavenly Spire of Legendary Game of Heroes. My in-game name is Ronin Ros. If you have any questions about the video or the Heavenly Spire, feel free to post some comments below or find me through the network app and message me directly there. If you're stuck on a particular stage and need some directed advice, there are some very awesome people in the Heavenly Spire chat group in the network app. Shout out to the people there who can help you with whatever stage that you're stuck on and based on the collection of cards that you own. So this is going to serve primarily as a basic strategy guide for how to approach crafting a deck for the Heavenly Spire for people who are just starting out of the game or for people who haven't really taken the time to check out the Spire. So Heavenly Spire is its own campaign within the game where there's some decent amount of rewards, and of course the very rare Dragoon Catalyst. So I'm actually on the last stage of the first tower, but here I have shown the first stage for the sake of a beginner's tutorial. And we're going to go over exactly how I approach crafting a deck when people ask me for help on any particular stage that they're on. So the first thing I do is I actually look at the cards that are available for that stage and that fit the allowed type and allowed affinity. So this first stage has 3 allowed types: Dren, Fable, Demigod, and it has 1 allowed affinity, the light affinity. So that's what we're going to go and search for in the collection. What cards do you have that fit these requirements? Keeping in mind the cards that you really want are ones that are going to produce gems. Alright, so we're going to sort by light affinity. Start with Dren. Okay. Obviously I have the Dren deck, but perhaps you don't. If you do have a deck, obviously that makes any particular stage easy, but for the sake of a beginner's video, let's say you just have a support card, which for free to play is pretty standard, is just to have a support card from the events. So I would use Indasha, who is great, especially for not only this stage but Spire, because she makes gems every 2 turns and you don't have to charge it up because it's a passive ability. So I'm going to put Indasha in this deck. Okay, so let's say you're kind of sparse on cards and that's the only Dren that you have. So let's take a look at the next option, Fable. Well, here I am pretty sparse. I only have 3 options here. But I do have Aladdin. Aladdin makes Power Gem 2s in my case, and if it's 6-star, it would make Power Gem 3s. And that's going to be very helpful because Power Gems really drive the damage that you can do in this entire game. So, the last one, Demigod. Now, fortunately, I was able to grab the Demigod starter deck, and if you didn't, then you'd have to look through your cards and see again what cards actually make gems. That's very important. You don't want a card that doesn't do anything, even if it has a high attack. If it doesn't make gems, it's not going to help you progress through the stage. So here, I do have Plague Seraph, which is actually the one I'd probably want to use, but I see a lot more people with the Prism Knight, who also makes a Power Gem 2, and if there's 8 or more gems, this effect is doubled. So let's say you do have, like me, a 5-star Prism Knight. Let's pop that in there. Okay. So let's say that's all you have, right? It's going to be a tough battle. So what are we going to do with the last 2 slots? Well, even though in the Spire there's only certain allowed types for every stage, you can still take advantage of cards that you own and relics that you own by putting them on the team even if they're not allowed. How are we going to do that? Well, let's first look at the relics that are available, and that's the next thing I do when I try to help people, is actually look at what relics they have. So of course, hopefully you do have one relic for the 3 cards that you have that are actually going to participate in the battle. Now I have a couple Dren relics, but I'm just going to equip one of them, okay? Now, what are we going to do with the other relics? So, we really need relics that can produce power gems. Generation 2 and Generation 3 relics are preferred. You don't really want relics that are only going to give you gems at the start of the battle, unless you can make enough gems to kill the boss in one hit. Otherwise, you're going to want you're going to want relics like this one that make power gem 2s based on how many gems that are on the board. Generation 1 relics are fine too, but they usually require you to have power gems on the board. So what I do is I look through the gear and I try to find relics of the affinity for the stage, in this case the light affinity. And I try to find, are there relics that you have multiples of, okay? So any relics that you have more than one of, that's of light affinity. So I have a couple of Hellboy guns, right? Okay, that's a good example, because this one makes power gems. It's not power gem 2, but let's say that's all you have, okay? But this is only for honored cards. This stage doesn't use honored cards, but I do have 3 of these relics. So I want to take advantage of that. So let's first equip those relics. Let's say I have 2 of them, okay? Okay. Now, in order to activate any relic, you need a card of that type. So I actually need an honored type. Now, if you have some cards that fit that criteria, the one that you want to pick is the one with the highest health. Why? Because even though this card can't participate in the battle, because it doesn't fit the required type, its health still contributes to the overall team health. So I'm going to pick Summoner Alice, because she has 7,000 health. Now some people ask, should I put an inactive card in the leader spot? I usually don't. When you do, it only applies the HP or health boost to the team. It doesn't apply the damage boost to the team if it's not able to participate in the battle. So I usually reserve the leader spot for a card that actually is going to participate in the stage that you're on. Okay, so we still have 2 more relics to fill out. It's okay if you only are able to end up with 3 relics. I would say that in any particular stage, you probably want at least 3 relics to have a good chance of beating the stage. So, because now we're in the Generation 3 for the game, and we have Slayer and Commander relics, I would say the next relic you should be looking for is one that fits the type that's most prevalent on your team. So here I have Indasha, which is a Slayer, Aladdin is a Commander and Slayer, and the Prism Knight is actually a Slayer. So I actually want a Slayer relic, a light Slayer relic, preferably. If you don't have one, then you want the one that's going to actually make power gems or power gems for you. But I do find that a lot of people, especially ones who have been playing or starting out more recently, do have some of these Generation 3 relics. So that's the example that I'm going to use here, Lunar Launcher, okay? So let's put Lunar Launcher in our team. Excuse me. Great. So in order to activate Lunar Launcher, I actually need a card from that deck. And the one that I have for with the highest HP is actually May, because I awakened it, but Assaulted Unit Yoju would probably be the one that you would use. Again, this is a card that's not going to participate in the battle and is just there to activate the relics. So if those are all the cards that I had, then I'd probably just pop in a Saber for the last slot. Or one of the legend relics, whatever options that you have available. So I'm just going to put a Exultant Saber in here. So there we have the team, okay, for that first stage. That's the basic premise of how you'd craft a deck. Now, you might think, how am I going to win with this team if it's not going to, make a lot of gems to do a big hit? Well, the key to actually using this kind of deck where you only have 3 cards that make sparse number of gems and 2 cards that trigger the relics is that you need to be triggering the relics. So, like here, in order to trigger these relics, you actually need 12 gems on the board. And Dasha makes 4 light, 1 power gem. So I can't show you because I've already beaten that stage, but when you use a deck like this that has 3 cards that make gems, you want to make gems and you want to keep them on the board, and you want to make matches with non-light gems. Why do you want to do that? So that you can get to the next turn, and hopefully, this will depend on chance, the gems that drop will be light gems. And what you want to do is you want to get to a point where you have maybe 9, 10 gems on the board. You can make some matches that don't use your gems on the board, but will allow a new 1 or 2 gems to drop down and give you that 12 gems so that you can start gaining power gems from your relics without actually having to do anything. That's going to be the best way for you to beat a stage when you don't have very strong cards. It takes a lot of practice and definitely a lot of chance involved, but it is possible, and I've done it on many stages with much worse cards than you're seeing here. I'm going to leave it at that for here because I'm only intended this to be a very basic tutorial about the basic strategy for the Heavenly Spire. So I would go through your own collection and see what cards you have that fit the allowed types. I would look through your own relics and see what you have for that affinity that can produce power gems, and try to create a deck that's going to help you beat that stage. Now, if you get stuck, you can definitely find me in the network app and ask me directly for advice, or as I mentioned before, you can visit the Heavenly Spire chat group and ask one of the many friendly people there how to beat whatever stage you're on with the collection of cards that you have. Hopefully this was helpful, and thank you for watching.